Hey guys, it's Leanne from Healthful Pursuit, and this is another mini-sode of the Keto Diet Podcast. You can get today's podcast extra and transcript over at healthfulpursuit.com/podcast/X33. And today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm sharing an audio interview that I did with Vanessa Spina a couple of months ago on how she incorporates way more protein on her ketogenic diet. She follows more of like a keto carnivore sort of eating style, and I think that this is just so fascinating. So if you're interested in boosting up your protein and maybe even eating carnivore, today's episode is for you. I got one cool thing for you today, and that is that we're switching up the format of the podcast. So starting next week, you'll notice that Wednesday episodes are a little bit different and so much better. And then in April, I know it's a far ways off, but I'm pretty excited about this. We're incorporating a Ask Leanne episode every once in a while. So you guys can submit questions. I will answer them. If you guys remember my podcast from way back where we used to answer questions, it'll be like that format, and many of you have said that that's helpful, and I'm just really excited to get to connect with more of you. Okay, so if you have questions about today's content, you can head on over to healthfulpursuit.com/contact and ask me. Okay, let's do this thing. You're listening to the Keto Diet Podcast, and if you haven't already heard, registration for Happy Keto Body, my 12-week video training program for women, has been extended to the end of the month. So many of you said you needed a bit more time before you could register. So we've upgraded our servers, boosted our team, and we're ready to support more students. Now you have until January 31st, 2019 at 11:59 p.m. Pacific to register. Get all the details now at happyketobody.com. And I'm super excited to see you on the inside. Now on to the show. Vanessa, what's up?
Hey, Leanne. It's so good to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So we just recorded a podcast for the Keto Diet Podcast, and this is a bonus for our patrons. And I wanted to chat with you about your carnivore experience. And are you still doing it right now?
I am literally counting down the days. I've got 8 days left now, and I don't know why I don't just honestly just stop it, but I made a commitment to do it for 30 days. I've definitely realize it's not for me long term.
Cool.
But I wanted to do it for 30 days in order to fully experience it and realize, like, the thing that was just getting me is, like, there's so much incredible variety and pleasure in having carbs, like even just 10 to 20 grams a day. So for people to give that up and never slip up, like for some people that you and I both talked to 9, 10, 20 years, there has to be something there, something that I need to experience for myself to understand why you would want to give up those things. And Amber O'Hearn put it so well. I had her on the podcast recently, and she said at the end, look, if you can tolerate vegetables, eat them. Like if you can tolerate these things and you can thrive on them, why would you live without them? Why would you restrict them? You know, I'm just I was really curious about it. Now I'm so excited about doing reintroductions because I learned about how you do those properly. And so I've got 8 days left that I'm committed. The last 10 days I'm doing dairy free as well because I want to make it like a full elimination diet, and also egg free, which is going to be harder for me because I love eggs so much. But yeah, I've got about 8 days left.
And you're doing something a little bit different than pounding the steak every day. Yeah. Like you're keeping your protein quite moderate, right? And having more fat. Can you tell me a little bit about why you chose that? And
yeah, I'd love to. So the first time that I tried it, I did it for 7 days, and I did a lot of research before by speaking to people who've been doing it for a while and how they were doing it. And the main message that I got was you can eat as much protein as you want, and it's going to be so satiating for you, and it shouldn't impact your health in any way negatively, and there's no way to overeat protein. So this is what the messaging that I was getting, even though I knew that this was not correct for myself, because that's a mistake I made when I tried Atkins, like when I was back in university. So I was like, I'm going to just test it for myself and see. And so I did bump up the protein again, but this time I was bumping it up with 0 carb as opposed to testing my protein threshold with having carbs. So what I found is that I was able to have as much as double or more of the protein that I was having before and stay in ketosis. But my blood sugar reflects that. It goes up and my ketones are lower. And for me, one of the primary reasons I'm doing keto is because I love the therapeutic effects of ketones. I love how sharp my brain is, how clear my brain is. I love how I have such low inflammation in my body. I love so many different aspects of it, the satiety, all these things that I find I get from certain levels of ketones, and also having low blood sugar because I have diabetes in my family. My priority is keeping my blood glucose concentrations low and having a low, very high sensitivity to insulin. So if eating too much protein is going to throw those things off, it's definitely not worth it for me. So this time around, I was like, I'm going to do a keto version of carnivore. I'm going to keep the protein moderated. I'm going to bump it up with the zero carb. And I have found it so interesting that I've been able to definitely find more satiety. That was the craziest thing that I found both times when I tried it the first time and the second time, is that I get this feeling of fullness where I have zero desire for food of any kind that I have never experienced in my life without having that stomach stretch. Like, so there's, different ways of feeling satiety and feeling satiated. And one of them, the big one that I would always rely on being a volume eater, was the stomach stretch. That feeling like that you get after a big voluminous meal. And I would get that without having the stomach stretch. And I've been getting that on carnivore, where I'm like, I can have this other food, and I'll like ask myself, like we were talking about asking yourself questions, like, do you want this like other sausage, or do you want this like cheese, or do you want this? And I'm like, no, like I'm good. And it's my body saying like, I'm full. I have no desire. Like, you think about that food and you're like, it doesn't have any appeal. It's almost like a repulsion. I never ever experienced that before in my life. I could always eat more, like no matter what. I could always eat more. But with carnivore, I have that, and it's from eating more protein. I am still keeping it moderated, like you said. My ketones and blood glucose are the same as they are when I do my regular keto diet. And the main thing that I'm going to be doing when I go back on keto is I'm going to keep the protein level higher than it was before. And I'm going to keep the carbs a little bit lower, because I just don't find that I really need that much of them. But for me, it's always going to be a ketogenic diet. And you can be keto anywhere from, like, before I was always around 20, 25, sometimes 30 grams of carb. I think I'm going to be closer to like 10, 15 and do that for a while, because that just seems more aligned with what I've been doing. And I've been enjoying that aspect of it.
Back to today's episode in a sec. Today's show is brought to you by Four Sigmatic. Years ago, I was addicted to caffeine, and it wasn't pretty. Multiple pots of coffee is what got me through the day. And if I didn't have enough, I'd suffer through headaches. If you want to get off the caffeine roller coaster like I did, try Four Sigmatic coffee. It has half the caffeine of the other stuff, but tastes like the real deal. What's the secret? Think of it like a 50-50 mix of coffee and unicorn dust, brought to you by the power of mushrooms. Mushrooms have been used in traditional Chinese medicine for centuries to treat fatigue, sickness, kidney disease, and low sex drive. Their coffee is a blend of organic Arabica coffee and mushrooms focused on increasing brain power, lowering stress, energy boosting, and more. You can use the coupon code KETO for 15% off all things at foursigmatic.com/keto. Unsure of the link? Check out today's show notes for all the details. Okay, back to today's episode.
It's so cool. I feel like, and I've been guilty of this too, where you're like, no, I'm doing carnivore and it has to be the way that everyone does carnivore, and this is how I'm doing it. And if I don't do it this way, it's wrong. And I'm going to be on this forever. And if I'm not doing this, then screw everything. I'm not doing anything. So
right. All or nothing.
Yeah. That all or nothing mentality. There's so much gray area in eating and finding what works well for our bodies. And what I love hearing from you is like, because I know what I know about my body right now as I start the carnivore experience is that I thrive more on protein, but I also need to keep that moderated, and I feel better with ketones. So I'm going to make sure I'm eating enough fat, and then transitioning your experience of carnivore over into your ketogenic diet. So like, yeah, I did that for 30 days. That was really great. And here are the things I learned. And that's how I'm incorporating them now into my ketogenic diet. Like, yes. Like that is so perfectly perfect. And I think people just get really caught up in the rules, and that stops them from having those light bulb moments of like, wait, my body did this? Whoa, nobody talked about this. I can incorporate it in this way. So I think that's amazing that you have that you've discovered that.
Yeah, I think that the best thing that has come out of the carnivore trend has been people challenging eating more protein. And for a long time, like it's the same thing on my program. I kind of discourage people overdoing bulletproof coffees and things because I was like, well, it's very satiating to have bulletproof coffees and things, keto coffees, but it's not necessarily the most like nutrient dense thing that you can have. So if you're choosing between one or the other, like I'd rather people just eat like a, well formulated like diet with lots of protein in it and like having actual animal protein or something, as opposed to having, sometimes 1, 2, 3, keto coffees during the day. I really like how carnivore has challenged people to incorporate more protein and not fear protein. And I feel the same way about the fasting trend. Like it's almost like you have to go all the way. The pendulum has to swing so far in the other direction just for people to go, maybe I don't have to eat every 2 hours. It's not like now you can't eat anymore, but maybe I could go several hours without eating and that's not such a bad thing. Or maybe sometimes I can skip dinner, I can skip breakfast and I can eat within a shorter eating window, or like playing around with these things and not fearing. And that's been the best thing that's come out of these trends. Like, even though I think some of them are very extreme, just eating meat and eating tons of meat and like just doing fasting, extending fasting, prolonged fasting all the time. I just don't think those are healthy for people, for the general population.
I hope you're totally digging this episode. I love putting these together every week, and I hope you're getting something out of it. I love seeing where you're listening from. So next time you're listening, or even right now, take a picture of yourself watching the show or a screenshot of your favorite episode and tag me on Instagram at Healthful Pursuit. And if social isn't your thing, that's totally fine. Just jump on your favorite podcast player and leave a review for the show. Okay, back to the good stuff.
There's really rare cases, I think, where, specific cases where these are like interventions that are life-saving. For the average person, just doing some time-restricted eating or playing around with your protein numbers, say the cool thing that people talk about with carnivore is if you go lower in carb, you can have a lot more protein and stay in ketosis. That's really cool. Like some people can double the amount of protein that they eat just from reducing carbs by, say, 10 grams per day. So I rather eat more protein and less carbs, especially when those carbs are like chocolate or, things that are not necessarily that are not as ideal as like having a bigger piece of steak or having more meat, that kind of thing. I think that's been the coolest things that have come out of these trends.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Back to today's episode in a sec. Today's episode is sponsored by Key, whole food keto bars created with love by a solo lady keto entrepreneur. I first tried Key bars during sailing training, where taking a break for lunch was not in the cards for the entire crew. First bite and I was hooked. These are whole food keto bars. No fiber fillers, no sweeteners, no stevia, no sugar alcohols, just collagen, gelatin, cacao butter, coconut, chocolate chips, and a couple of other whole food ingredients for real food flavor. You can actually taste the ingredients. There are a couple flavor variations of the bar. My personal favorite is quad chocolate because it's nut and seed free. However, Kevin's favorite is chocolate chip. You can try yours today by going to healthfulpursuit.com/KE and using the coupon code Leanne10, that's LEANNE10 for 10% off. If you're unsure of the link, simply check out today's show notes for all the details. Okay, back to today's episode.
My final question to you was blood work. Did you end up testing your blood before? Are you going to do after? What was your thought on that?
I want to do it. I didn't end up doing it before. I know we were messaging about that. I was trying to find a lab locally in Prague. I found a couple of places, but it's not as easy here to do. I think in the US, there's so many options. I was even hearing today, I think on a podcast, that you can have all of your hormone levels tested just by sending it away. So I need
pinprick on your finger. I'm getting a kit on Friday. I'm so excited about this.
Oh my gosh, tell me about it.
You prick your finger and it takes like a little bit of blood and you send it off. Like the kit, I ordered the kit yesterday. It comes in 3 days. So it's 3-day shipping. You prick your finger, you put the sample in there, you send it off, and then they upload it to your online account.
And is that for like genetic testing or for hormone?
They do a little bit of genetic stuff, mostly just blood markers like hormones, just the run-of-the-mill blood work, inflammation, cardiovascular markers. And like it's affordable. Like
that's amazing. I'm going to be in Canada next weekend. So if I order it now, I could probably get it in time.
I don't know if they do Canada yet.
Or the US in September.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'll send you the name of it. I can't remember. But yeah, I mean, so cool. But it can be a challenge when you're doing those experiments. But I feel like you have a really good handle on your body and you can tell when things aren't working and are working and how to adjust.
Yeah, I test so much, a little bit compulsively, like my blood sugar and ketones and stuff. But I would like to start testing other markers more. And I love how you do that on your program, and you encourage women to do their own testing, take those things, get them done on their own, take them to their doctors, like all these different things. And you have that a part of your program, I think is really, really awesome for people to encourage them to do that.
Yeah, I think it's so beneficial. I love doing it. I love geeking out about it, trying new things and learning about stuff. So, well, thanks so much for chatting with me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Leanne. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much to Vanessa for recording this with me. I'll include a link to her social media, website, and resources in the podcast extra and transcript, which you guys can get at healthfulpursuit.com/podcast/X33. And I will see you guys soon. Bye. Thanks for listening to the Keto Diet Podcast. Join us again in a couple of days to discover more Keto for Women secrets for your fat-fueled life. The Keto Diet Podcast, including show notes and links, provides information in respect to healthy living, recipes, nutrition, and diet, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Keto Diet Podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without any representations or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.